Hey, so here we're going to show you how to get a DXF file into AutoCAD and get it ready for the laser cutters. So if you have AutoCAD open, we're going to start by just opening the file. And you may need to navigate around a bit, but mine's right here. And when I open it, you'll see the triangle tool down here in the corner. So if we want to navigate around a little bit, you can do that with a trackpad or with a mouse. A lot of people like to use a mouse with CAD programs because there's some good features like being able to do the pan and zoom with the wheel is super nice. But you don't have to have a mouse to work with AutoCAD or any CAD package. You can do it with a trackpad or anything on a laptop. If you want to get this right in the center of your screen, a nice thing to do is come over here and get this familiar box that we're used to from Fusion or other CAD packages and just double click right on the center of it. It'll bring whatever you have and center it. You can also zoom in and out on a trackpad on a laptop. You're going to be sliding fingers up and down for that. With the wheel, you just rotate the wheel in or out. It's pretty nice. And um, before we go any further, we're going to go ahead and save this file. So come up here to the top and go to Save. And so we can choose to save it as a DXF and continue working as a DXF, but we want to save it now as just a native AutoCAD file. Everything from here forward, we want to save as a native AutoCAD file. And I'm going to change my file name a little bit. Do whatever you'd like. Hit save. I already have a file named that. That's okay. I'm going to say okay right over it. So that's it for getting started, getting your file imported in and then now saved as an AutoCAD file, not a DXF file anymore. So if you actually want to open several DXF files and get them all into the same AutoCAD, you go through the same process. You just open each one separately, and then you need to select the parts that you want to copy and paste into the same document. Like, for instance, we can add, let's say we want to create a new file and just create the default file type. And you'll see it shows up here in a tab as drawing 2. We're going to go back to the place I started, which is my original file. There are lots of good things to know about how to select things in AutoCAD. If you press and hold a mouse button down, you're going to get a selection kind of like this, where you can kind of go around everything you want and get it, and you select everything. I hit escape to deselect that. You can also click once on the selection in the left button and then drag down, and you'll see this box is blue. Select again, and it selects everything in the box. And a really interesting feature in AutoCAD is imagine I don't want to select the whole thing. So let's say I just want to select part of what's here. So there you see, I just selected everything that was totally enclosed in the box that I just had. Let me do that again. I think in this case, the only things totally enclosed are this one diagonal line and these 5 circles. Well, if I do that instead of from left to right, if I do it from right to left, it's green. And now it doesn't just select what's in the box, it selects any feature that crosses the box. So it includes this line over here, this line right here, which wasn't totally in the box, but it was partially crossing that line. Here, nothing too complicated. If we wanted to get the whole drawing into the other, make a new drawing with lots of parts, we just copy and paste however you normally copy and paste on your computer, and then come over here to the drawing, say paste, and now it's floating around. We can put it where we want it. It wants to know where the insertion point should be. And this is where you start noticing that you'll interact with AutoCAD with your keyboard a lot more than maybe you're used to coming from other packages like Fusion. I'm just going to enter 0 and then tab and 0. Whenever I insert something, I like to insert it down at the origin and then move it. If it starts at the origin, I know exactly where it is, and then I can move it to somewhere else. You know, if your origin's full of stuff, you can insert it somewhere else very easily as long as you know where it is, and then you can select the stuff you just inserted and move it around. Anyway, this is just to show you how to put lots of things into one file, which we actually don't need to do right now. All right, now that we have our part, our DXF into AutoCAD saved as a DWG, we're going to add some rectangles to represent the size of the laser cutter that we're using. So we're going to come up here to draw, and we can select a rectangle. Notice down here at the bottom, this command line. Don't need to use it right now, but just be aware there's a lot of features you can use completely on this command line down at the bottom of AutoCAD. Also see here around where my cursor is, this is what we're going to look at. Where's the first corner point? We're going to put this at the origin. So I'm going to put in, just type in 0, tab 0, and hit return. And now you'll see if I move my mouse around, it's trying to put in a rectangle, the other point, the other corner of it. The other corner depends on which laser cutter you're using. Laser cutter I'm going to be setting this up for has a bed that is 32 inches in the X direction and 18 in the Y direction. And now I'll hit enter. I'm going to go here and double click on this square, and now we can see we have our laser cutter boundary set up. So this big rectangle is the complete size of the bed of the laser cutter. We want to also create a rectangle that is a 1/4 inch offset inside of this rectangle, where we don't want any of our drawing going over that 1/4 inch boundary, because it gets too close to the edge, and too close to the edge on the laser cutter does not ever serve anybody well. It can have problems. So we're going to just select the rectangle by left clicking on it, come up here in the menu and select this button, the offset. And as you bring that down, again, you can see the menu at the bottom. If you want to go down and enter things there, you can. I'm going to enter it here. Through is what we want. There's some other couple options where it will erase the original object or change the layer of the new object that we're creating. We just want to do through, so hit return. And now you can see it can make it bigger or it can make it smaller. So make sure you want this to be smaller by a 1/4 inch. So move your mouse cursor so it's inside, and then just type in 0.25 for a 1/4 inch and hit return. And there we go. We have our rectangle that is now a 1/4 inch smaller than the full boundary of our laser cutter area. And we don't want any of our drawings, our cuts, to cross over that 1/4 inch boundary. Now you might notice it can get a little bit confusing with these boundaries we do want to cut and other things we don't want to cut. And we may want to be cutting things in different ways. And this is where we'll use layers in AutoCAD to clarify all of that. So come up here, and we're just going to select layer properties. And right now everything is in the same layer. And it's white is the color of that layer. We'll just leave that for now, and we're going to create, though, a new layer. And we can call it something else if we want to. I'll just call it boundary, perhaps. And then the other thing we're going to do is right-click over here and select the color for that. And you have a lot of options, but I really want you to stick down onto this basic set of colors. And go ahead, choose magenta for this one. And hit OK. And now we're going to close out of this box where we're setting up our layers. All right, so we have our new layer. Now I just want to select these two rectangles, which I'm going to do that by left-clicking on the inside of the rectangles and dragging from right to left. So it will select anything that this box crosses, just selects those two. I want to move these to our new magenta layer. So up here on the top, now there's a drop down of our different layers. I'm going to put it in one called boundary. See the colors change. And boom, now the rectangles are in that layer. And interestingly, you can do some cool stuff here. You can turn that layer on or off. So now it's turned off so you don't even see it. Turn it back on, you can see it again. But hey, now we're ready to set up and go down and start modifying our actual drawing so that it is ready to be laser cut. All right, so it's time to go down there and work with our actual part. Let's zoom into it and let's get this up in the screen by panning up. I'm going to click on the little hand and hit escape to release the hand. Or if you have a mouse, you can just push down on the wheel to do that. So let me go ahead and select the part. I'm going to click up here and come down to the right. It'll select everything within the boundary, so it won't select the magenta rectangles. Now I can click on move up here, totally fine. You can also type in move. Either way, it comes to the same place. Down here, you can say, well, is it displacement? And displacement is the primary option, or you can specify the base point. We're going to specify the base point, all right? Which our base point will be 0, 0, which makes this a lot like just choosing the displacement option. And now what we enter next, it asks for a distance and an angle. I tend to like to just add it to move things in a Cartesian XY fashion. And we could just move it up a 1/4 inch and a 1/4 inch to be right on that boundary of where the laser cutter can cut. I'm going to move it up a 1/2 inch and a 1/2 inch just to give myself a teeny bit more cushion. But to do that, notice I'm entering 0.5 and then I'll put a comma in. And now we can enter it in as like a Cartesian XY instead of putting the tab in where it would have been a distance and an angle. You can do either thing that you want, whatever works for you. But right now, I've just moved it up a 1/2 inch in the X and a 1/2 inch in the Y. All right, hey, so now we're going to add some features to our AutoCAD drawing. Features we really could have added in Fusion, but I want you to get more familiar with AutoCAD, and so adding a few things in here will help you navigate around a bit more. We're going to zoom in, and what we're going to do is add a little line that drops down from this hole to the edge of our tool, and same from this hole to the edge of our tool. So we just have a line that we can etch in from the circle down to the edge of the tool. And we'll do the same thing from the circle to the side over here. So let's select the line command. And there are lots of ways to figure out where to put this. I'm going to just put it starting at the center of the circle. It doesn't snap as well everywhere else. Oh, there we go. Look at that. It's not snapping, is it, to the edge of my circle? But if I hover over here for a minute, it's thinking about the circle a little bit more, and then it draws this line, and then it will snap to the edge of my circle. That's a nice feature, right? So that'll be a starting point. And then if I keep it kind of close to 90 degrees, when I move my cursor, it'll do that. And then it snaps to the edge. Click on that. Now it's looking for the second segment of my line, and I'm going to hit escape to release that. So now we've been able to draw from the edge of our circle by first centering on the center of the circle, our mouse. And once it knows we're curious about the circle and we move downward, it'll let us snap onto the edge of the circle. Click that as a starting point, and then come down and keep your cursor kind of close to vertical, and it'll snap onto the edge. Now we can do the same thing. Click on line again, come over here and hover towards the center of the circle where we want it to start. But now there we go. Now it's got our circle. As we move to the left, now it snaps with that X. And we keep it moving over here and we have it snap to the edge of our tool and then hit escape so we don't want a second segment of our line. Well, now that we have these two lines drawn, we can do patterning just like we did in Fusion to replicate these to different locations. I'm going to start with the horizontal line just by clicking on it. And you see we want to replicate it 3 more times, and these are at a 1-inch interval. So I can come up here and look and see, here we go, making an array. If I click on it, you can see I could have a polar array, so a circular array, path array, or a rectangular one. We want a rectangular array. And when we do that, it brings up all this menu in the top. And you can see right now, it looks like we have 4 columns in our array and 3 rows. But we really just want 1 column in our array. Isn't that right? And I think we want 4 total rows. The distance between is listed as 0.2067 as a default. We really want that to be an inch, so just 1. And now we look down here and we see each one, if our circles have been put appropriately an inch apart, then each one of these lines is exactly lined up with a circle. We can close the array and we're done. All right, so now we're going to do the same thing with our vertical lines. So we can select that one vertical line, come up here and say rectangular array. Now in this case, we don't have 4 columns. I think we have 8 different columns of dots down there. We'll see if that looks right. And we only have 1 row. Each of these circles is 10 millimeters apart, which is 0.3937 inches. So we don't enter the 10 millimeters. We need to enter in whatever 10 millimeters is in inches. So 0.3937. And now we'll look down here and we see that, yep, we do have indeed 8. And these do line up perfectly with each circle because our circles are 10 millimeters. And our lines are 10 millimeters apart, which is 0.3937 inches. So close the array. And now we've added these lines in AutoCAD to our triangle tool. Next up, we want to put some text on the tool. All right, so now we're going to add some text to the triangle tool, and we'll come up here to the bar and select on, you guessed it, text. We want to do multi-line text, and you're going to need to enter the top left corner and the bottom right corner for where you want to put it. Let's just put it way over here for now. And when you start typing, you can see it's a certain font. See the font is labeled up here. You can choose whatever font you want, either beforehand or after you go. Here, I'll pick Gill Sans. And now type in cm for centimeters and say close the text editor. I'm done. Now, of course, we want to have this on the multi-tool itself. So I can click on Move. And it'll ask me, what do I want to move? Well, let me select what I want to move. I want to select that object. Now I have to hit Return to say I'm done selecting objects. And now it wants to know a base point or a displacement. I'll just say my base point is somewhere over here near the actual centimeters. And now when I start moving stuff around, it'll kind of move around with me. The location isn't very precise for this. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So maybe between the 4th and the 5th one. Looks at a good distance and click. And now we've moved centimeters down to where we'd like it to be. All right, now we're going to repeat the process to put in inches. I'm going to keep my font consistent. Inches, and close the text editor. Now we're going to need to not only move our text, but rotate it. So you can, let me go ahead and select the text. You can select it beforehand. Say rotate, and now it wants a base point. All right, I'm going to select it kind of roughly down here, close to the, close to the bottom left of it. And now it says what kind of angle. You can see it snaps to certain angles, and this is what we want it to be, is snapping down. So it's vertical in this orientation. I'll click on that, and I'm done. Now I'll select the text again. There we go. And I will move it. In this case, I'll select the base point kind of close over here and bring it. See, it's 4 inches total, or sort of like 4 marks for inches. Here, it's snapping to where I don't want to be, so I'm going to move it up here for a moment so it's not snapping to its old location. And now go through the same process and move it down right here between these two dots roughly, and that makes me pretty happy with its location right there, I think. All right, on the final drawing modification we're going to make is just to put your UVA ID on the diagonal. So insert some more multi-line text. I'm going to use the same font I've been using. Use whatever you'd like. And enter your ID. All right, now we have this. We need to do a couple things to it, right? We need to rotate it and we need to move it. Let me go ahead and rotate it first. Click on rotate, and what's a base point? Right here. And then it wants to know what angle to move it to. So I think we want to move it to minus 45 degrees to match the angle of the triangle tool. So I'll just type in minus 45, and there we go. And now we move things just like we've been moving them throughout. We select the objects, hit enter, select a base point, and then drag and put our name right over here, our ID. All right, there we go. So now if we zoom out a little bit, we see our tool is finished, and now there's just a few more steps to do to get it totally ready to send to the laser cutter. Cool, you've got this part ready to go to the laser cutter. A couple things you still need to do though in order to tell the laser cutter what to do with these different lines in the text. So for the text, we're going to do something called rastering, where the laser cutter isn't going to cut all the way through, and it's going to kind of work like an inkjet printer. For most of these lines, we're going to want it to cut all the way through. But for the lines that we added in AutoCAD, these little small ones here and here, we're just going to want to let it cut a little bit through, and that's called etching. So in order to tell it what to do differently, we put different types of things that we want to be cut differently in different layers. So let's come back up here. That's right, everybody, say it with me. AutoCAD is like a parfait. It's got layers. So here we go. We're going to add actually 3 layers. We can call the first one cut. Call the next one, we're going to add another one, I'm sorry. There we go. Call this next one etch. And then I'm going to make a third one and call it raster. So with the, we're going to change the colors of these. With the cut one, we want that color. All these colors are going to be off this row of the basic colors. For cut, we do cyan, so C and C. For raster, we're going to do red, R and R. And then for etch, it's going to be green. So don't have the first letter to help you remember that, but we're going to make it that green color. All right, so now we've added these layers. Let's close out of our layer property manager. All right, so now we just need to select each item that we want to go into each layer. So we can select inches as some text. I just selected that by clicking straight on it. And then if I come over here, and I'm just adding each thing to my selection, I have RRB5B and CM for centimeters. All 3 of these pieces of text are selected by my just clicking on each one. And now I'm going to go up here to layers, and I'm going to come down, and this is going to be rastered. So I'll click on that, and they've all turned red. All right, so now with the red text being rastered, I'm going to turn that layer off so I don't select it anymore just by hitting the light bulb. So it's gone. In order to get the rest of everything into the correct layers, I think it's going to be easiest if I put everything of my part first into the cut. And then I'll pull some of it out and turn it into etching. So now all of that is in the cut layer, and hit escape to deselect everything. All right, and now I want to move those two arrays into the etch layer, not into the cut layer where they are right now. If I turned off the cut layer, everything goes away. So I'm going to select the array. And you see when I select it, it brings up this array menu, but I can still go back to the home menu and say, oh, yep, it's in the cut layer. I want to move it to the etch layer. And there you go. Those have been moved into the etch layer. And then now I'll select the other line, the other array, and move those into the etch layer also. Now if I zoom back out a little bit, let me turn off a layer that's not the current layer. Sounds good. There you go. So that's the only thing left when we have the etch layer only showing. Let me make the current layer the base layer we came into. If I turn off etch, you can see it's just those lines going off. And if we turn everything back on, there's our part. Now it's ready to go to the laser cutter. But imagine you wanted maybe to not just make one of these, but you wanted to make a bunch of them. That's pretty common in working with laser cutting, is you want to make more than one of something. And so when you do that, you want to make sure you don't waste a lot of material. And ultimately, using the array features you used earlier are going to be really super helpful. In this case, because if we just were to array this, we would probably end up losing a lot of space and material that would be useful to use. If I select all of this and I say array, okay, great, I can do that. I can make it a little tighter, right? I can get it down to maybe like 4 inches. There we go, and 4 inches. There we go. But still, we're losing all this material is material that we could be using, but we're not using on the upper right part of the triangles. So we're going to undo that. And before we would make an array for this part, we would want to mirror the part so it makes more of a rectangular box that we're cutting out of material. So select everything, click on mirror, and it says first point of the mirror line. I'm going to put it around right there. Up, that looks like it's going to be too close, doesn't it? All right, let's not do that point. Let me select my part again. Mirror, a little bit higher up this time. That's looking a lot better, right? In terms of the mirror line and nothing's intersecting. We might be able to get anything a little bit closer if we fiddle around with it a bit. And I think ultimately what we want to put this at is negative 45 degrees, right? There you go. You do not want to erase the source object. So now that we have this, we can select both of these parts. And now we can look at rectangular patterning. Getting these parts as close as we can while still leaving just a little bit of material in there. Let's see if 4 is too close. Yeah, 4 is too close on that angle. There we go. So this is a good amount of material in between. Let's try 4.5 up here too. And there we go. So now with just a little, now we're using up much more of the material, right, to produce our parts. So this is just a quick example. Every part you have is going to be different, but this is a quick example of how you can use patterning and mirroring to really maximize the utilization of your plastic when you go and cut it. So you'll save this file. Let's say here you wanted to produce all of these triangle tools. You'd save it. It's ready for the laser cutter. and it's time to watch the video from the A school to learn exactly how to take this file and send it to the laser cutter.